All right, class is in session. So I have been doing harsh vocals for a little over 10 years. I first started learning them when I first heard some rock and metal music in my, very early teenage years. I wanted to learn how to do that, but my parents wouldn't let me and they didn't let me do it in the house. So I went as far as to, take my MP3 player and headphones out into the car and sit outside in the driveway and do just screams and stuff for hours. So, I typically do two different types of screams. Unfortunately, right now, I can't really do fry screams very well. I don't know what it is. The last year, my allergies have been really bad, and that has almost wiped out my ability to do fry screams. So even the high screams that I do now are typically false chord screams, just pitched up higher. So it sounds a little bit different than what I used to do. But I'm going to teach you how to do false chord screams. So first thing that's very important is to warm up your vocal cords, even though technically when doing false chord screams, you aren't even using your vocal cords. But what I will typically do is just typical vocal scales and then add in, and I demonstrate, but you can find tutorials on how to do vocal scales and stuff online, wherever, on YouTube, and I'm not going to spend 5 minutes warming up here in front of you. And then just slowly add in the grit of the false chords. So, false chord screams. In your throat, you have two different sets of vocal folds. I don't know, maybe you have more, but the two that I know are your true folds, better known as your vocal cords, and your false folds, which is what we are going to use for our false chord screams. So the way to kind of distinguish between the two is if you think of an angsty teenager whose parents just told them to take out the trash and they don't want to. You got that like angsty teenager sigh, that right? So you hear that rumble in there. It's not just a so in that sigh, you hear both your true folds and your false folds. The false folds are where the distortion is coming from. And here is why, if you do the false fold screams properly, you will not damage your vocal cords because you will not be using them at all. So the trick to being able to do them both is, or to do false chord screams, is just practice, honestly, because it takes learning how to isolate the false chords. So the trick that the trap that you don't want to fall into is creating the distortion with your vocal cords. And that's what's going to damage your voice, right? So when you're doing practicing screams and stuff, if your voice starts to hurt, a little bit of, discomfort, just like any muscle or anything, you exercise for a while. Like yesterday was, I exercised a little bit too much and my thighs are a little bit sore. It happens, but they're not stabbing pain. If it's stabbing pain or anything like that, or like, oh my God, I'm so sore today, you're doing something wrong. So it shouldn't hurt, especially when you're first beginning. They might be tired, they might be a little bit sore, but not like I said, not like a sharp, painful sore, but just sore, like a muscle. Drink lots of water. When you're done, I would suggest something that I found that really helps, that's soothing, is some peanut butter. Take just a half a spoonful of peanut butter and just kind of eat that by itself. It really helps soothe everything in your throat. Otherwise, I don't know, honey, I know people do tea, that kind of thing. Anything that's good for your throat is a good way to finish out. I just like the peanut butter because it's nice and thick and it has a little bit of protein in it, and that just kind of helps everything a little bit. So that's some basic advice there before we even get into it. So the false chord screams, you're going to be generating the sound from, like I said, your false folds. So the way I practiced it was just simply start with that sigh thing. And just hold that 5 seconds or whatever and really focus on that grit sound. where that grit is coming from. Okay? Then as you practice, try more and more to focus on that and try to eliminate the true folds, the vocal cords, from doing that, right? So you'll start out with the and just stick with that until like you're good, you're comfortable, no issues with that, and then go on and just keep trying to eliminate some of the vocal cords. Right, until eventually that's what you're shooting for. Honestly, you're shooting for better than that, but that's what I got. So obviously I can't get as low as I'd love to. I can't get as high as I'd love to, and my growls aren't as powerful as I'd like them to be. It's always a work in progress, constantly learning. And then a lot of what you do is mouth shape, right? So if you want to go higher, if I want to go higher, look, see, just talking with your vocal cords. This is how I talk. Without changing the pitch of my voice, if I open my mouth wider, it just naturally becomes higher pitched. And then the same way, if I close my mouth, it just becomes lower pitched. And I know that probably sounds really dumb, just my voice like that. But it's the same concept, right? So I'm going to just do one growl and just move my mouth just to demonstrate. See? So before you focus on trying to do anything higher or lower, just work on getting the grit, the growl down, and then mouth shape. Then, lastly, if you really want to have some fun, your tongue positioning. Right, so I'm going to actually get a little bit closer here, just so you can kind of see better. One that I really like to do, there's a tunnel technique that a lot of people like to use. So if you take your mouth and put your tongue right up by your front teeth, and feel like that, right? That's one that's pretty popular. One that I actually learned from somebody else is a similar technique, but if you take your tongue, put it right there by your teeth, and then flip it so that it opens up one side of your mouth, you can hear the distortion just from me talking. Right? So just mess around with some tongue positioning and stuff, but that's kind of later in the learning process. But again, take baby steps. Make sure you're doing it right as you go. You know, you don't want to just jump right into, I'm going to go as low as possible, I'm going to go as high as possible. No, start with the simple, get comfortable with that grit feeling and all of that, and make sure so that way you're doing it right, and then just keep going from there and increasing more and more. And also water, drink lots of water, but not ice water. Definitely not ice water, some nice room temperature water, even if you can stand it. Some lukewarm water is really good. So any questions, just hit me up.